The crystal chandeliers of the Sheila banquet hall reflected thousands of lights in the champagne glasses. Today, the Lee family was celebrating a double occasion, 50 years of marriage for the older generation and 20 years of marriage for the younger. A double anniversary, as mother-in-law Eugene liked to repeat, required a special grandeur. Sonny stood by the window, watching the guests. She was 42, but looked older, pale face, sunken cheeks, trembling hands. For the past 3 years, she had barely left the Lee mansion, increasingly feeling weak and dizzy. Doctors shrugged, calling her condition chronic fatigue and age-related changes. "Sonny, where are you?" Her mother-in-law's sharp voice made her flinch. "The guests are asking about dessert. Are you daydreaming again?" The 42-year-old woman obediently headed toward the kitchen area, where the chefs were preparing exquisite dishes. 20 years ago, she had dreamed that one day she would sit next to her husband at such a celebration, receive congratulations, and feel like part of the family. Instead, she coordinated the work of the serving staff. "Mom, don't treat her like that," muttered Mingyu, her husband, lazily. He was sitting at the main table, sipping whiskey. At 44, he looked younger than his wife, well-groomed hands, neat face, fashionable suit. The head of the family corporation, Lee Enterprises, as he was always introduced to guests. "Don't interfere," Eugene waved him off, adjusting her pearl necklace. "I've been tolerating this mistake for 20 years. Can't I make a remark?" Sonny heard these words. She heard and remained silent, as she had for 2 decades. She brought another tray of pastries just as her mother-in-law rose with a glass in hand. "Dear guests," Eugene radiated triumph. "Today is a special day. 55 years of my marriage and 20 years. How should I put it? Of Sonny being part of our family." The hall fell silent. Sonny felt her legs giving way but continued to stand, clutching the tray. "You know, I want to be honest," her mother-in-law continued, steel in her voice. "We always knew that our son made a mistake marrying you. But we tolerated it. Tolerated your background, your simplicity, your inability to behave in society. We hoped at least you'd give us an heir, but—" The tray slipped from Sonny's hands. Crystal plates shattered against the marble floor with a deafening crash. The world spun and darkened. The last thing she heard before falling was her mother-in-law's irritated sigh, putting on a show again. Sonny opened her eyes in a hospital room. White ceiling, antiseptic smell, the quiet beeping of machines. Her head throbbed, her mouth was dry. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't obey. How much longer will she last? Her mother-in-law's voice came from the corridor. "Mrs. Lee, I can't discuss." "Dr. Juan, you understand the situation," Eugene spoke more quietly, but Sonny caught every word. "It would be better to do it quickly. You understand? I'm tired of it. 20 years of shame for our family. If not for our son's foolishness. I'm a doctor, I know who you are. And I know how much your clinic owes our corporation. So just tell me, how much longer?" Sonny's heart pounded so loudly it seemed it could be heard in the corridor. She closed her eyes, pretending to sleep, when the hospital room door opened. "She's sleeping," her mother-in-law declared. "Good. Let her rest. Maybe she won't wake up again." The footsteps receded. Sonny lay still for another 10 minutes before daring to open her eyes. The room was empty. Only the quiet hum of the air conditioner and her own uneven breathing. "Do it quickly." Those words echoed in her mind. Does her mother-in-law want her dead? But why? She had always been obedient, submissive, never argued. She worked in the house like a servant, asking for no gratitude. What more could this woman want? Sonny closed her eyes, and her memory flashed back to a scene 20 years ago. She was in the office of Lee Taijun, Mingyu's father, founder of Lee Enterprises. The old man was ill, stage 4 lung cancer. Doctors had given him a month, maybe 2. Son, he croaked, pointing to the chair across his massive desk. Sit. She lowered herself onto the edge of the chair, hands folded in her lap. Married for only 6 months, conversations with the formidable head of the family still frightened her. Do you love my son? Taijun asked bluntly. Yes, father. You lie, the old man smirked and coughed. But it's a good lie. One you believe yourself. Mingyu doesn't deserve such love. He's weak, wasteful, and foolish. But you don't know that yet. Sunny remained silent, not understanding where he was going. I'm dying, Taijun continued. And I worry, what will happen to my business? I built this corporation for 40 years. Started with a small TV repair shop, and now we have factories in 5 countries. And all of it will go to an idiot who can't tell a balance sheet from a banquet. Father, Mingyu. Silence, he interrupted. Listen carefully. I have no choice. By law, the inheritance goes to my son. But I saw how you looked at our factories when he took you on a tour. Saw your questions, your interest. You are the only one in this family who asked how the production line works. He pulled out a thick folder of documents. I am transferring everything to you. What? Sonny jumped. Father, I can't. You can. And you will. Formally, Mingyu will remain director. Receive a salary, represent the company. But the main shareholder will be you. 51% of the shares. Main accounts. Real estate. But why? Taijun leaned back, pain in his gaze. Because I pity you. You don't know what family you married into. My wife is a viper. My son is her copy, only without venom, but with foolishness. They will consume you within a year. But if you have power, real power, you will survive. Just don't tell anyone. Ever. Let everyone think Mingyu owns everything. That is your protection. Understand? And if I fail? You won't. You have what my son doesn't, conscience. And brains. I will watch over you from the grave, he smiled faintly. Family lawyer mister. You knows everything. He will come once a year with the documents. You just sign and stay quiet. When the time comes, you will understand. For now, live quietly. Be invisible. Invisible Empress? Exactly, Taijun nodded. Protect what I built, Sun He. And protect yourself. The next morning, a young doctor entered her room. He looked about 35, stern face, attentive eyes behind glasses. Mrs. Lee Sun-hee? I'm Dr. Choi Jae-hin, neurologist. Dr. Hwan asked me to consult on your case. Hello, she whispered. He pulled up a chair next to her bed and opened a tablet with her medical record. Tell me about your condition over the past 3 years. In detail. Sun-hee began listing her symptoms. Dizziness that started 3 years ago. Muscle weakness. Memory problems. Morning nausea. Hair loss. Trembling hands. And what do you eat? Dr. Choi asked unexpectedly. Excuse me? Your diet. What exactly do you consume? Sun-hee thought for a moment. For the past 3 years, she had eaten separately from the family, her mother-in-law insisted, claiming that Sun-hee needed a special diet for her health. The cook prepared separate meals for her, which were brought to her room by the housekeeper, Mrs. Kim. Diet food. Vegetables, rice, sometimes fish. Who prepares it? Our chef, Mr. O. And who brings it to you? The housekeeper. Mrs. Kim has been working in our house for 15 years. Dr. Choi wrote something on his tablet, then looked at her very closely. Mrs. Lee, I want to take some additional tests from you. Blood, hair, nails. Do you mind? Of course, but... Why? I have a suspicion, he answered evasively. The results will be ready in 3 days. Meanwhile, he lowered his voice, don't eat anything from home. Only hospital food. It's important. Sunny's heart began to beat faster. Doctor, do you know something? For now, I only suspect. But if I'm right, it changes everything. He left, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Sunny lay staring at the ceiling, and a monstrous picture began to form in her mind. The dizziness had started 3 years ago, precisely when her mother-in-law insisted on separate meals. The weakness gradually increased, almost imperceptibly. Doctors couldn't diagnose her. And now she had heard the conversation about how much longer she'll last. No, she thought. It's impossible. Even Eugene is not capable of that. That's a crime. But a voice deep inside whispered, she is. More than capable. On the evening of the 3rd day, Dr. Choi returned. His face was grim. He closed the hospital room door and drew the curtain on the window overlooking the corridor. Mrs. Lee, what I'm about to tell you stays between us. For now. You understand? She nodded, clutching the blanket. In your blood, hair, and nails, traces of arsenic have been found. Small doses, but regular. Judging by the accumulation in your body, this has been going on for about 3 years. Possibly slightly less. The room spun. Sunny grabbed the bed rails. You're being poisoned, the doctor said calmly. Slowly, methodically. The goal isn't to kill immediately, but to create the appearance of a chronic illness. You become weak, dependent, worthless in the eyes of those around you. And then, when the time comes, a stronger dose, and it will all be blamed on a complication of the disease. Who? She rasped. Who has access to your food? The cook. The housekeeper. Mother-in-law controls the menu. Then you know the answer, Dr. Choi sat opposite her. The question is, what will you do? I don't know. The police? Do you have proof of who actually put the poison? No. There will be scandal, investigation, and then acquittal due to lack of direct evidence. But it will warn your family, and they will become cautious, or they may accelerate the process. So what should I do? Sunny felt panic rising. Think. Plan. Collect evidence. In the meantime, I'll admit you to the hospital. Let's say for 3 weeks. During this time, you will regain strength, because the poison will no longer enter your body. Full recovery will take months, but you will feel better. And during this time, you will decide what to do next. Why are you helping me? Dr. Choi wiped his glasses with a cloth, a characteristic gesture that Sunny would remember. Because 5 years ago, a patient with similar symptoms was brought to me. I was young, inexperienced. I didn't recognize the poisoning. She died 2 months later. Official cause, heart failure. I accidentally saw our medical records a year later and realized what I had missed. Since then, I've studied toxicology. That's why I recognized the signs in you. He stood and headed to the door. 3 weeks, Mrs. Lee. Use them wisely. For the first 5 days, Sunny simply rested and ate. It was astonishing how quickly her body began to recover once the poison stopped entering. The trembling in her hands gradually weakened. Dizziness became less frequent. She could sit, walk around the room without severe weakness. And then she began to remember. 20 years of marriage flashed before her eyes. Meeting Mingyu at a student party, she was a poor pedagogy student working as a waitress. He was the golden boy from a wealthy family who fell in love with her simplicity and sincerity. Or so he claimed. The first meeting with the parents. Eugene's icy gaze, assessing her worn clothes and cheap handbag. Mingyu's father, Taijun, was more restrained, but also looked skeptical. She's not from our circle, the mother-in-law declared that same evening, not bothering with Sanhee's presence. Mingyu, this is just an infatuation. Sleep with her and forget her. But Mingyu was stubborn. He insisted on a wedding. Modest, without fanfare, because the parents refused to pay for this shame. Sunhee thought it was romantic at the time, marrying despite everything. She didn't know hell was beginning. The first year was spent trying to please her husband's family. Eugene criticized every step, her clothing, speech, even how she held a teacup. Mingyu didn't defend his wife, merely shrugged, "Mom knows best, listen to her." Taijun watched silently. Then, 6 months before his death, he summoned Sunhee to his office and changed her fate. Now, lying in the hospital room, she finally understood the scale of his gift. The old man hadn't just transferred assets to her. He had given her a weapon. Power. The ability to control the situation, even if she hadn't realized it. After Taijun's death, Mingyu officially became the director of the corporation. But the controlling shares, 51%, were in Sanhee's name. The main accounts, primary assets, 3 villas, all in her name. The family lawyer, Mr. Yoon, came once a year and brought papers for her signature. She signed them without thinking. Mr. Yoon explained it was formality, tax optimization, standard procedure. Now Sunhee understood, it was protection. On the 7th day of hospitalization, she asked a nurse to bring her laptop. She logged into the online bank, which she had never checked before. She entered the details stored in her old notebook. And froze. Her personal account had 200 million won. The corporate account, 1.5 billion. For more accounts in different banks, total sum. Sunhee counted 3 times. 5 billion won. About $4 million. My God, she whispered. And there was more. 3 villas in different districts of Seoul, registered in her name. A country house on the coast. Controlling shares of Lee Enterprises, 51%. In her name. Mingyu only owned 49%. He was a hired director in his own family company. And she, the true owner. Taijun, Sunhee thought, did you foresee this? Did you know I would one day need this power? Of course he knew. A dying man sees people through and through. He knew his wife was a predator. That his son was a weak puppet. And that the only way to protect a poor girl from a simple family was to give her an unbreakable financial armor. On the 10th day, Mr. Yoon, the family lawyer, came to the hospital. A lean man of about 65, always impeccably dressed, with an unreadable face. Mrs. Lee, how is your health? Improving, Sunhee replied. Mr. Yoon, I need your help. He raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. All these years you've been bringing me documents to sign. You said it was just a formality. But it wasn't, was it? The lawyer slowly sat in the chair. The late Mr. Lee Taijun hired me a year before his death. He gave very specific instructions, ensure that the controlling shares and the family's main assets were registered in your name. At the same time, create the appearance that his son managed everything. You were supposed to be able to live peacefully, without interfering in affairs. But if necessary, to have decisive power. Why didn't you tell me? Mr. Taijun forbade it. He believed that if you knew about your power too early, it would change you. Or the family would sense a threat and start acting. It was better for you to remain in the shadows. Invisible Empress, son, he smirked. Exactly, Yoon nodded. But judging by your question, the situation has changed? Son, he told him everything. About fainting at the anniversary. About overhearing the conversation between her mother-in-law and the doctor. About the tests revealing arsenic. Mr. Yoon listened without interrupting. When she finished, he took out his phone. I need time. A week, maybe 10 days. I'll find a way to gather evidence. What evidence? Dr. Choi said there's no direct proof. If they've been poisoning you for 3 years, they had to buy the poison somewhere. Transfer money. Communicate. People always leave traces. Especially those too confident in their impunity, the lawyer stood. In the meantime, don't eat anything from home. Even treats. And tell no one about our conversation. Mr. Yoon, son, he called after him, why are you helping me? You could have just stayed silent. He turned at the door. Because Mr. Taejun was not just my client. He was my friend. And before his death, he asked me for one thing, to protect you. I spent 20 years fulfilling that request in the shadows. Now it's time to act openly. The following days dragged painfully slowly. Sunny lay in the room, pretending to sleep when the nurses came. Dr. Choi visited twice a day, checked her tests, and nodded approvingly. Her condition improved daily, though full recovery would take time. On the 16th day of hospitalization, late in the evening, Mr. Yoon entered the room with a thick folder. His face was tired, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. I found something interesting, he said, spreading printouts on the table. Your mother-in-law's financial transactions over the past 3 years. Pay attention to these amounts. Son, he examined them. Every 2 months, 300,000 won was transferred from Eugene's account to a company called Green Life Medical. What is this? Officially, a company producing dietary supplements and health products. But I have a contact in financial police. This company was under suspicion 2 years ago. There is evidence they supply certain substances to people willing to pay. Nothing was proven, but their reputation is telling, Mr. Yoon said, taking out more documents. Now look at your housekeeper, Mrs. Kim's phone records. He handed over a printout of calls. Son, he saw dozens of calls between the housekeeper's number and her mother-in-law's number. Especially many in the last 3 years. They call constantly. Several times a week. Strange for a housekeeper and the lady of the house, isn't it? Usually, morning instructions are enough. But that's not direct evidence, son, he whispered. No. But here's what I propose, the lawyer leaned closer. You will return home. Weak, ill, as before. My acquaintance, a private detective, former police officer, specializes in such cases. He will come disguised as a security system technician. Install hidden cameras. If the housekeeper is really adding something to your food, we'll catch it. And you'll preserve food samples for analysis. Cameras? Sonny frowned. But that's legal if it's in your own room, Yoon interrupted. You have the right to install cameras in your personal space. And in the kitchen. Technically a gray area, but if we obtain evidence of a crime, the court will consider it. Especially combined with medical tests and financial traces. Son, he thought. 3 years of poison. 3 years of slow murder. Could she just return and let it continue? But Mr. Yoon was right. They needed irrefutable proof. All right, she nodded. When do we start? In 2 days. I'll arrange the cameras the day before your discharge. I'll tell the family the hospital recommended installing an emergency call system in your room, citing your fainting episodes. No one will suspect a thing. On the 18th day, Sunny was discharged from the hospital. She returned to the Lee mansion pale, leaning on a cane, the perfect picture of a sick woman. Finally, Eugene didn't even rise from the couch. 3 weeks you've been in the hospital at our expense. I hope now you'll get to work. Or will you continue playing the dying swan? Sorry, Mother, Sonny said meekly. I'll try to be useful. Mingyu sat in a chair, buried in his phone, not even looking up as his wife entered. Sonny went to her room, a small bedroom on the 3rd floor, where she had been relocated 8 years ago, supposedly so as not to disturb her husband's work. Since then, they had slept separately. In the room, inconspicuously, 3 microcameras were installed. 2 more, in the kitchen, disguised as new smoke detectors. 1, in the corridor near the mother-in-law's office, hidden in a decorative plant. Sonny sat on the couch and took out her phone. She installed an app showing live feeds from all cameras. Now all that remained was to wait. The wait was short. The next morning, exactly at 9 o'clock, the housekeeper, Mrs. Kim, brought breakfast. Oatmeal, toast, green tea. Eat, madam. I prepared your favorite. Sonny nodded with a grateful smile. Mrs. Kim left. The woman stood, locked the door, and carefully transferred all the food into an airtight plastic container, which she hid in her bag. This would serve as physical evidence. She ate crackers she had brought from the hospital buffet instead. Through the camera, she watched Mrs. Kim descend to the kitchen. The housekeeper glanced around. The chef had gone to the pantry and quickly opened the top cabinet above the refrigerator. She took out a small unlabeled vial, poured a pinch of white powder into a separate bowl of oatmeal, stirred carefully, hid the vial back. Everything was recorded in high resolution. Got you, Sonny whispered, saving the video file to cloud storage. But this was only the beginning. At lunch the same day, she overheard a conversation between her mother-in-law and the housekeeper in the corridor. The camera recorded every word. Is she eating? Eugene asked. Yes, madam. She eats everything. The plates are clean. Strange. Usually, after the hospital, they become more cautious. Are you sure you're adding enough? As you instructed, madam. But perhaps we should wait. What if the doctors notice? Doctors are idiots. They didn't notice anything for 3 years, Eugene smirked. A couple more months, and this problem will solve itself. I've tolerated her presence in my house for 20 years. Soon, it will all be over. And Mr. Mingyu? My son won't even notice her absence. He's been living his own life for a long time. He has a young mistress, if you're not aware. The new secretary, 26 years old. Once this one's done, he'll marry someone suitable. From our circle. Sonny clenched her phone so hard her fingers went white. So Mingyu was cheating. And his mother knew. More than that, she approved. 20 years. 20 years she had been faithful to a man who considered her a temporary mistake. For the next 10 days, Sonny methodically collected evidence. Each portion of food she carefully sealed in separate containers and handed over to Mr. Yoon, who sent them for independent testing. Cameras captured the housekeeper adding something to the food once a day, sometimes at breakfast, sometimes at dinner. Conversations between her mother-in-law and the housekeeper were recorded. With her husband. Once, Eugene called someone, discussing the inheritance after the daughter-in-law's death. When she dies, everything goes back to Mingyu, right? The mother-in-law asked. A voice on the other end, probably a lawyer, responded. What do you mean she's the main shareholder? Eugene exclaimed after a pause. Impossible. Everything should belong to my son. A long pause. Then a muffled, check carefully. And find a way that after her death, the property goes to the rightful heir. To my son. Sonny smirked as she listened to the recording. So they had only just started checking the documents. Too late. On the 11th day after her discharge, Mr. Yoon arrived late in the evening with a thick folder of documents. The tests confirmed arsenic in all 14 food samples. The concentration is low but regular, exactly how slow poisoning is carried out. The video footage is clear, you can see Mrs. Kim's face, see her take the vial and add the substance to the food. Audio recordings contain direct confessions from your mother-in-law. We have everything needed to open a criminal case. What's next? Next, you decide, the lawyer said, looking at her seriously. We can file a police report immediately. Your mother-in-law and the housekeeper will be arrested. An investigation and trial will follow. It will become a public scandal, the Lee family, attempted murder, the corporation. The media will tear you apart. The process could drag on for a year or more. Or you use this evidence as leverage. Gather the family, announce the divorce, show everything you know. Take what rightfully belongs to you, which is almost everything. They won't dare oppose, because the alternative is prison and disgrace. Quick, clean, without publicity. Sunny thought. A public scandal didn't scare her. She had lived 20 years in humiliation. What did she have to lose? But Mr. Yoon was right. The second option gave her more control and spared her months of legal battles. I want to organize a family dinner, she said firmly. The day after tomorrow. Tell them I have an important announcement. Are you sure? Absolutely. The lawyer nodded. Then I'll prepare all the documents for the divorce, for transferring the remaining assets still formally in your husband's name. You'll just sign and take what's yours. Mr. Yoon, Sunny looked him in the eye. Thank you. For these 20 years. For keeping the secret. For protecting me, even when I didn't know. The old lawyer allowed himself a rare smile. I was simply fulfilling a friend's will. But you know what? Mr. Taejun would be proud of you. Very proud. The evening arrived. The grand dining room of the Lee mansion gleamed under the chandeliers. The table was set for four: Sun-hee, Mingyu, Eugene, and Mingyu's younger brother Miho, who had flown in from London upon hearing of the important family meeting. Sun-hee sat at the head of the table. She wore a simple black dress and had tied her hair into a low bun. No show of weakness in her movements. Nearly a month without poison had brought noticeable improvement, though she was still paler than usual. What is this theater? Eugene looked irritated. You're hosting a dinner? Since when does a servant summon the masters? Please, have a seat, Sun-hee said calmly. Mingyu shrugged and sat down. Miho watched with curiosity. He had always treated his brother's wife neutrally, but didn't defend her either. I gathered you to announce something important. Sun-hee folded her hands on the table. Tomorrow, I am filing for divorce. Silence fell. Then Eugene burst out laughing. You? Filing for divorce? Sweetheart, you've forgotten your place. You're nobody. No money, no home, no job. Where will you go? Back to that poor village you crawled out of? Mother, don't speak so harshly, Mingyu said weakly. Sun-hee, if something's bothering you, we can discuss. Discuss? Sun-hee allowed herself a cold smile. I've been silent for 20 years. Endured humiliation. Worked in this house as a servant. Listened to being called a mistake, a disgrace, unworthy. 20 years, Mingyu. What is there to discuss? You ungrateful wretch. Eugene shouted. We gave you shelter, food, clothing. Let you carry the Lee name. And this is your gratitude? You gave me poison, Sun-hee said quietly. Her mother-in-law froze. Her face went pale. What did you say? Sun-hee took out her tablet and turned it on. The kitchen camera footage appeared on the screen. The housekeeper opens the cabinet, takes out a vial, adds white powder to the bowl of oatmeal. Date and time in the corner. For 3 years, Sonny continued in a steady voice, you've been poisoning me with small doses of arsenic. The goal, to make me weak, sick, worthless. And then, to kill me, blaming it on complications of a chronic illness. Mingyu turned pale. This must be a mistake. No mistake, Sonny played the audio recording of Eugene talking to the housekeeper. The voices were clear, a couple more months, and this problem will solve itself. I've tolerated her presence in my house for 20 years. Eugene jumped up, knocking over her chair. Where did you get this? You're spying on us? I am defending myself. Sonny placed a thick folder on the table. Here are 14 food sample analyses, all contain arsenic. Video recordings with date and time. Audio recordings of your conversations. Financial transactions showing purchases from Green Life Medical. Phone records showing constant communication between you and the housekeeper. Everything needed for a criminal case of attempted murder. You wouldn't dare, her mother-in-law hissed. This will destroy the family's reputation. The corporation. It will, Sonny agreed calmly. Which is why I propose a deal. You agree to a divorce without objections. I take what is legally mine. In return, I will not file a police report. The evidence remains with my lawyer in a sealed envelope. If anything happens to me, it automatically goes to the prosecutor. Mingyu swallowed nervously. What? What belongs to you? Sonny took out another stack of documents. Lee Enterprises, the controlling stake, 51%, was registered in my name 20 years ago. 3 villas in Seoul. A country house. The main corporate accounts. Everything is in my name by your father, Lee Tae-jun's directive. You're lying. Mingyu shouted. Here are the proof of ownership. Shareholder registry statements. Bank documents. Sonny fanned out the papers. Check for yourself. Migo took one document and scanned it. His face went pale. It's true. The controlling stake is registered to her. Father did this before he died. He couldn't. Eugene grabbed the edge of the table. Tae-jun promised everything would go to Mingyu. He promised everything would remain in the family, Sonny corrected. And he kept his promise. Everything stayed in the family. Only I, the part of the family he deemed worthy of managing the inheritance. Why? Mingyu croaked. Why did father choose you? Sonny looked at her husband, this weak, childish man she had once loved. Because your father knew you'd squander everything in a few years. He saw how you spent money on entertainment, cars, mistresses. Yes, Mingyu, I know about your secretary. And the one before her. And 2 others over the last 8 years. Her husband lowered his gaze. Your father loved you, Sonny continued more gently. But love doesn't make a person blind. He saw your weaknesses. And he decided to protect his legacy in the only way, by entrusting it to someone who wouldn't betray it. And you? You stayed silent for 20 years? Miho looked incredulous. Why? Because I loved your brother. Hoped he would change. That the family would accept me. That I would become one of them. Sonny allowed herself a sad smile. Foolish, isn't it? 20 years of illusions. Sonny, Mingyu reached across the table. We can fix everything. I'll divorce. I'll end things with that girl. We can start over. No, she pulled back. Too late, Mingyu. I am no longer the naive girl who believed in fairy tales. I am the woman they tried to kill slowly. And I will not forgive this. Eugene collapsed into her chair. Her face was ashen. What do you want? A divorce. Tomorrow. I take the controlling stake, it's mine legally anyway. The 3 villas, the country house, the main accounts. You get the villa in Gangnam, it's registered in Mingyu's name. Plus, I leave you 5 million won as a one-time payment and 1 million won per month for living expenses. That's enough for a decent life. 1 million? Eugene shrieked. That's poverty. That's 15 times what my mother earned working in a sewing factory, son, he replied coldly. You'll survive. The alternative, prison. For both of you, including the housekeeper. Attempted murder, 10 to 15 years. You're 75, Omoni. You'll die behind bars. Choose. And the corporation? Miho asked. I'll sell my controlling stake, son, he answered. There's already a buyer, a Japanese conglomerate offering a good price. The deal will take 3 to 4 months considering all the checks. You'll destroy father's legacy. Mingyu jumped up. I'll preserve it, son, he countered. Under new management, the company will thrive. Mingyu, for the past 3 years, I've quietly corrected your financial decisions. Saw the reports. Saw how you almost bankrupted 2 branches with impulsive moves. Your father was right, you don't know how to run a business. But you know how to spend it. A heavy silence fell. Then Eugene spoke, her voice trembling, if you go to the police. I'll go to prison. Yes. I'm 75 years old. I know. I'll die there. Perhaps, son, he stood. But that is your choice, Omoni. Either you sign the divorce papers tomorrow morning, and I remain silent. Or you refuse, and the day after tomorrow, all evidence will be with the prosecutor. You have tonight to decide. She headed for the door. Son, Miho called. Father. He really said those words? About you safeguarding the inheritance? Son, he turned. Yes. And I did. 20 years I worked in the shadows. Studied financial reports, monitored the market, corrected critical mistakes your brother made through the lawyer. Think that's where the profit growth in recent years came from? I expanded the corporation into Asian markets. I secured contracts with 3 major distributors. Mingyu didn't even read the documents he signed. He was too busy with mistresses and golf. You ran the corporation? Mingyu looked stunned. For the past 10 years. Quietly, through the lawyer and trusted people. And you were too sure that I was a pathetic, sick, uneducated woman. That disdain saved me. Son, he left the dining room, leaving the family in stunned silence. The next morning, Mr. Yoon arrived at the Lee mansion with a notary and a stack of documents. The family gathered in the office, silently, with grim faces. Eugene had aged 10 years overnight. Mingyu looked confused and broken. Only Miho remained somewhat calm. He hadn't lived in Korea for many years and observed almost as an outsider. The documents were signed in 20 minutes. Divorce without division of assets, there was nothing to divide. Almost everything already belonged to Sun Hee. Mingyu received the villa in Gangnam plus financial support. The housekeeper, Mrs. Kim, was fired the same day, no explanation, no recommendation. She disappeared without even trying to take her things. She got scared, Mr. Yoon remarked as he escorted Sun Hee to the car. Realized you knew. Most likely left the country. Let her run. Sun Hee sat in the back seat. The main thing is it's over. The lawyer looked at her attentively. What will you do next? I'll leave. Far from Seoul. Find a quiet place by the sea. Open a bookstore, always dreamed of it. Live peacefully. And the corporation? I'll sell it within 6 months. Part of the money I'll invest in a charity for domestic violence victims. The rest is enough for a modest but dignified life. Mr. Yu nodded approvingly. Mr. Taijun would be proud of you. You became exactly who he believed you were, strong, smart, honest. I just learned to protect myself. Sunny looked out at the mansion where she had spent 20 years. Better late than never. 4 months later, Sunny stood on the terrace of a small house by the sea. The city of Busan welcomed her with a warm autumn breeze and the cries of seagulls. The corporation had been sold for a good price. The new owners promised to preserve jobs and grow the business. The Lee family signed all documents silently. The alternative was too frightening. She herself bought a modest house by the coast. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a terrace overlooking the sea. That was enough. Miss Lee? A voice came from behind. She turned. On the terrace stood Dr. Choi Ji-hun, the same neurologist from the hospital. In his hands, he held a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. Dr. Choi, Sunny said in surprise. What are you doing here? I moved to Busan 2 months ago, he smiled. Opened a private practice. I specialize in toxicology and rehabilitation for poisoning victims. And when I found out you were here too, I decided to visit. See how your health is doing. Much better, she accepted the flowers. My tests are clean. My strength has almost fully returned. I've even started doing yoga in the mornings. I'm glad to hear that, he said, walking onto the terrace to look at the sea. Beautiful place. I like it. Quiet. Peaceful. No one knows who I am. A woman who survived poisoning and reclaimed her life, he said. That's impressive. They stood side by side, watching the waves. Sunny remembered how 4 months ago this man had saved her, recognizing the symptoms of poisoning. How he had risked his career to help her. Dr. Choi, she began, why did you help me back then? You could have just treated me and let me go. He removed his glasses and wiped the lenses, a habit Sunny had already memorized. Because 5 years ago, I didn't help another woman. And she died. I promised myself, if I ever saw similar symptoms again, I wouldn't stay silent. You were my chance at redemption. You saved my life. You saved yourself. I just pointed the way. Sunny poured tea, and they sat at a table on the terrace. The conversation flowed easily, naturally. Dr. Choi talked about his new clinic and plans to create a center for victims of poisoning. Sunny shared her thoughts about opening a bookstore in the city. She had always dreamed of working with books, but the Lee family had considered it unworthy. You know, the doctor said, finishing his tea, I'm glad I met you again. I've been thinking about you these past months. Wondering if you'd make it. I did, Sunny smiled. I'm stronger than I thought. I noticed that back at the hospital, he stood, preparing to leave. I should go. But may I visit you again? Maybe we could go somewhere. A cafe or for a walk. Sunny's heart skipped a beat. No, wait. Her heart just raced a little faster. She looked at this man, calm, honest, the one who had seen her not as a pathetic sick woman, but as a person worthy of being saved. I would like that, she replied. He smiled warm, sincere. Then see you tomorrow. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll pick you up. Dr. Choi left, leaving Sunny alone with the sunset and a quiet happiness she hadn't felt in 20 years. 6 months later, they were married. A modest ceremony by the sea, with only close friends. Sunny wore a simple white dress and felt truly beautiful for the first time in her life. Mr. Yoon attended the wedding, bringing a gift, an old photograph of Lee Taijun. He would be proud of you, the lawyer said. You've done what he dreamed of, preserved the legacy and found freedom. Sunny looked at the photograph. Her father-in-law's stern face, yet there was warmth in his eyes. Thank you, father, she whispered. For believing in me. For giving me the tools when I was defenseless. For seeing not your son's mistake, but a person. She placed the photo on a shelf in her new home. Next to it was a wedding picture of her and Dr. Choi, laughing and embracing. The bookstore, new chapter, opened a month after the wedding. Small, cozy, smelling of coffee and fresh paper. Sunny spent her days there, talking with customers, recommending books, creating the place she had dreamed of all her life. Sometimes she heard news of the Lee family. Mingyu married his secretary, but the marriage was already cracking. The girl demanded luxuries he could no longer provide. Eugene lived in seclusion, refusing to leave the house, afraid of public judgment. Miho returned to London and no longer contacted the family. Sunny felt no schadenfreude. Only a slight sadness for the 20 years wasted. But those years had taught her the most important thing: she was stronger than she realized. More patient. Smarter. For 20 years she had been the invisible empress, ruling from the shadows. Now she was simply herself, Lee Sun-hee, bookstore owner, wife of a loving husband, a woman who had finally found peace. And that was more than enough. One evening, sitting on the terrace with her husband and watching the sunset, Sunny said, "You know, I'm grateful to them." "To whom?" Dr. Choi asked in surprise. "The Lee family. For the humiliation, for the betrayal, even for the poison. Because all of it strengthened me. Showed me who I really am. If they had treated me well, I would have remained that naive girl. But now I know my worth." He wrapped his arms around her shoulders. "You're an extraordinary woman." "No," Sunny smiled. "I just finally learned to value myself. It took 20 years, but better late than never." They sat in silence, listening to the sound of the surf. Somewhere far away, in Seoul, the Lee family paid for their sins with quiet shame and fading influence. Here, by the sea, Sunny began the life she deserved. The life of a free woman. Who would never again be anyone's mistake.